welcome to Dustin's Kaleidoscope. I am Dustin. Today I have Janice Gilyard here, who is a family historian and a genealogist. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Dustin, for having me. Thank you.
So we met a few months back
Yes.
at a meeting. Actually, we sort of crossed paths on Facebook
Yes.
on a genealogy site. And after I met you in person, which was that was great, I wanted to get to know you a little bit better and understand what you knew about genealogy, because as you know, genealogists sort of stick together. And,
Right, exactly.
And I
Exactly.
wanted to find out how you got started in genealogy. So can you start off by telling us about how you started in genealogy and family
Yes.
history? That would be
I
great.
can. First of all, my husband was working on his,
Oh,
and
okay.
he said to me, "You should, research your family history." And I said, "Well, I know who they are." And he said, "Well, tell me who they are." And I was able to tell him, my parents, my grandparents, and then when it came to my great-grandparents, it was like, okay, wait, I really don't know. And that was 20 years ago.
Wow.
And so once I started, I was hooked, and I've been working on it ever since.
And so you actually started off with your husband, not
Yes.
even your family.
Right.
So when did you start working on your family?
Well, he started his, and I would go with him, and I had questions and wasn't really interested. But once I started and called family members and started getting the family history and researching, just as a beginner, I was hooked. And so I've been working on it now for 20 years.
Wow.
And I would consider myself a genealogy addict.
Okay. It doesn't take very long for
Right.
that. I can attest to that. So when you say you went with him, this is 20 years ago. So this
Right.
is before, I believe this
It
is
was
before
before
Ancestry.
Ancestry.com had all of the states, the census records available. We would go to New York, to the archives, to New York, the
okay.
regional archives in New York. And that's how I started. And we would go through microfilm instead
Wow.
of being able to look everything up online. So when people are starting now, I'm telling them, I always say, you have a better advantage than I did when I started 20 years ago. So visiting family members with him, going to South Carolina or North Carolina with him, and then at the same time starting to interview and reach out to my own family members.
Wow. And how did you find your family members? What was the reception like from family members when you
The
were
first
asking for
person that I
information?
started with, I called my mom because I was very somewhat close with my father's sister, but I really didn't know her real name. She had a nickname, so I called my mom to find out what her real name was, and I started with her. And so then she would give me a few names, and they didn't know all of the children, and so she says, "Oh, well, you should talk to this person." So it was sort of like family networking. And when I started, I really didn't know anything, and there weren't a lot of resources readily available.
Okay.
So I kind of wandered around in the dark. And so one of the things that I focus on now is really helping people to do it the right way and
Okay.
documenting and so forth. And we'll get into that, I'm sure. But that's how I started.
Okay. And you've been doing this for 20 years. So I'm curious, do you go straight up the tree, or do you go out on the branches? And
You know what? One thing that a friend told me, she said, just work on one person at a time. And then when you exhaust all of, the resources for that person or whatever you can find for that person, then move on to the next person. And that's how I did it. So in the beginning, it was a little jumping around. And then once I really figured out, okay, start with yourself, branch out to your parents.
Okay.
And then I would choose a line. So the main line that I worked on the most was my father's line that I found the most
Oh,
interesting.
okay.
And that was for my great-grandfather, Edward Cross.
okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So is that because you had the most information on him, or was it just because you were interested
I did not
in
grow
him?
up with my dad. I mean, I knew who he was, and I didn't grow up with him, so there was that longing to know, and he was still alive when I started.
Okay.
And so folks would talk about my great-grandfather, Edward Cross, and it was like, okay, so, well, where did he come from? Because I researched him to a certain point, and then I stopped at 1900, couldn't find anything. And I'm like, okay, well, where was he before 1900? He was
Right.
born in 1875, so why
Okay.
wasn't he showing up in that area?
Right.
And for the 1880
1880
census.
census, yes.
So it turns out that, when I was researching him, when I started out, he was out of Marion, South Carolina. So when I kept looking, turns out he came from Columbia, South Carolina, and he had another family.
Oh, completely
And
different family.
no one in my family knew about that. And it took me 13 years, but I actually found descendants from his first family. And we've had, and that's what this picture represents here, we've had several reunions connecting the families. And the story was, and if you look at the heading I have, Edward Cross, he didn't drown. And in my presentations that I give, it's, and here's what I found. So when I reached out and found the first person and started talking to them, and that was online through Ancestry.com with the little leaf and all.
Oh, okay.
I said, oh, well, what can you tell me about Edward Cross? And they said, well, he drowned. And I said, no, he didn't drown. I said, he moved to Marion, South Carolina, married my great-grandmother, and had 10 kids. And so, it was like through the grapevine, and they're still talking about it. And we have a Facebook page, a family Facebook page with over 300 family members because we were able to bring the two families together.
And is it active?
It is.
Wow.
It is. And it continues to grow because people are like, who are these people? They're spreading the word about it. So it continues to grow.
That is awesome.
So 13 years, but I found him. He had daughters, so I didn't know their married names.
Oh, that's right. It's much harder. I find it much harder for, to find family members through the females because their names change, whereas the men, they keep the same.
Well, the Mormon
one.
Church, the way that I found them is that they released records. This was about maybe 8 or 9 years ago. They had a whole new set of records that they released. And I decided to put my great-grandfather's name in to see if one of the children would show up with his name on their death certificate. That's how I found them.
You're kidding.
And then I put the name in Ancestry.com. I had a leaf. And that family, there was this man, and I emailed him and I said, you have one of his children, his first daughters. I said, why is she in your tree? Who is she? And he said, oh, it's my daughter-in-law's grandmother. Oh, so one of my great-grandfather's children, his first set of children, and reached out to them, contacted them. They were open to talk. And so now I find out that we have family all over the place, all over the country.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yes.
I mean, that you were able to do that. And just for people who do not know, the Mormon Church has a really large archive.
Exactly.
Maybe you could explain a little bit about that
Well,
archive.
they have a website, first of all, familysearch.org, and it's free. All you have to do is put in you do have to create an account, but it's still free. You put in your email address and you create a password. And so if you're just starting out, they have tons of resources for you to guide you in your search. You can create a free family tree, and I just think that they're awesome. And actually, for all 50 states, pretty much, they have a wiki page, for the state.
Oh, that's right.
And
that's
guides,
right.
and so many. And I was really surprised at how great they are. They actually have a chat feature that if you're stuck and you don't know what you're doing, you can click on the chat feature, and they have someone that will actually help you.
Wow.
So they are a great free resource. And then there's Ancestry.com.
And then Ancestry is a paid.
Right. So you can do a trial for 30 days, and then if you like it, then you can go ahead and subscribe. And I've been a subscriber for, I would say, almost 20 years. I never let go of my account. And I actually use the two of them. I use familysearch.org and Ancestry.com because many times I find the records on Ancestry.com, and I keep looking and I'm going, well, where are they in this census? And then I go to Family Search, and the information is there.
Oh, okay.
And then Family Search is really good because they have the Freedmen's Bureau records on there as well.
Okay.
So if you have someone who's coming out of slavery, you have their names and their location, you can pretty much find that documentation as well, which I have.
Wow, that's pretty amazing because I always forget about the Family Search, and then someone will say, hey, have you looked there?
It's awesome.
And so they're both databases. One, Ancestry is like you said,
Paid
only
subscription.
$3 for 30 days, and then after that you pay.
But Family Search, the Mormon Church is really big on, excuse me, family history and research.
Right.
And so they make a lot of their resources available for free. And I've actually met some really cool people from that organization as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
So now that we're talking a little bit more about like how people can go to different databases, can you tell us a few ways to get started?
Yes, I can. So if you're a beginner, I always suggest to folks that they start with themselves and then move on to their parents and then to their grandparents. And then if they can, to their great-grandparents. But with most people, if I'm helping them, the first thing I'll ask them, okay, what's your name, your parents, and then your grandparents. Because to me, in most instances, when I put the grandparents in, you just keep going and going and going, and you find so much information. What's interesting to me is I've done a lot of research, and on one of my lines, I have my family history back to 1790.
Wow.
On another line, back to the 1500s. But that just recently happened for me. But in the past, I've helped people. And for instance, my daughter is dating someone. And he said, oh, can you check on my family? And I did. Trace his family back to the 1500s within 3 hours.
That's
his
amazing.
family is very well documented. So
wow.
It was just like, wow, really? But the other thing is, what I love about genealogy and helping people, especially if they're just starting, a lot of times when I help them, what I'm looking for eventually will come.
Right.
So I kind of say it's like a genealogy reap, you reap what you sow. You give and you help, it comes back to you. So the main thing is starting with yourself, your parents, your grandparents, using the census records. And census records are available from 1790 up until 1940.
Okay.
And then when you find someone, working your way as far back as you can for that person. And the big thing is, please keep your information organized. That is so important. Ancestry.com and FamilySearch.org, they are great sites that once you find information on a family member, enter that information and keep it organized. If not, as I said, when I started, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have anyone to help me. I ended up with 14 boxes of documents. And I used Ancestry.com, but I wasn't diligent about it. So now, as I'm helping people, I always tell them keep everything organized from the start, enter it into a program, and keep your files organized. And even if you keep them organized, sometimes as you're looking for things, you may pull something out, or if you're like me, when you go places, I don't want to drag everything around. I'll pull what I need, and it's like, okay, wait a minute. When I come back, I make sure I straighten it up again. Or you might want to create a binder, a genealogy binder, if you're starting out.
So I have two questions for you. You mentioned that people who are just starting out should really look at the census. What exactly are they looking for when they are looking at the census?
Okay, so you want to have, as you're starting out, if you know your parents' birth dates, make sure you're putting that information. And of course, age, is important. If you have the grandparents' names, start with the grandparents. It's just easier because it takes you a little bit back further, and then you can build your tree from there. And then work your way through each census record for each person.
Okay.
And then you build your tree, and you just keep going. But my whole thing is, sometimes you'll jump around, but it's just easier, and your research is more focused if you just take one person at a time or one line at a time.
Okay. And the other question I have, and I think we have just about a minute, you said to keep it organized.
Yes.
How do you organize? You organize it by
name,
maternal? Okay.
By surname.
Okay.
And maybe have a bin for your mom, a bin for your dad, and then go that way and keep it organized in terms of, okay, so yourself, your parents, your grandparents, and so on. The other thing is, sometimes you may, for instance, I have a folder for a gentleman, Thomas Dixon, and I have a slave narrative for him. And I know his wife, he was married twice, and his children. So I have a Thomas Dixon folder. So it's based on, what you know about that person and how there's a lot of flexibility. There's no one set way to do it. You have to do what works for you. But I recommend organize it by parents, by your parents, your mom, your dad, and then keep everything, make sure you keep a research log, make sure that if you have it by surname and keep it in alphabetical order, it's just so much easier if you need to go and pull something or retrieve something. It's easier.
Those are some great tips. So we're just about done with this segment, but we'll be back in a few moments, and we'll continue from there because I want you to finish with that because I know you have some more tips for us too.
Yes.
So I'm Dustin. This is Dustin's Kaleidoscope, and we will be right back.
After 17 years working as a mason, Mike was laid off. I met him when he came into the library looking for help. He found a job opening, but the application was only online. Mike said he'd spent his entire life around tools, but had never used a computer. I showed him how, and he ended up applying for numerous jobs online. I saw Mike the other day. His new computer skills paid off. He's working again.
New Jersey libraries are transforming lives. Tell us your story.
Hi, and welcome back to Dustin's Kaleidoscope. I am Dustin, and I am here with Janice Gilyard, who is a family historian and genealogist. And at the end of the last segment, you were telling us a little bit about some of the tools and some of the things that you could use to find family history, and of course how to organize. But I'd like to talk about perhaps some of the pitfalls.
Yes.
So tell us what you
Pitfall number one, please don't assume that everyone with your surname or last name is related to you. A lot of people do that.
So I shouldn't assume that Alexander Dumas is related to me?
Okay, well, you've got jokes. But at the same time, I'll share something with you. At the same time, sometimes surnames do match depending on the area and all, but I've met people that are like, oh, well, one of my main lines is Cross, and they think that everyone with the last name Cross. And I said, unless you can document it and location, stop. Don't do that. Another mistake is adding ancestry trees to your own without doing your own work.
Oh, yeah, that. Okay.
And a lot of people do that, and they don't realize that some of the information is not correct.
And that is, and for people who are not familiar with Ancestry, I can go on, you can go on, and I can build a tree, but if it's not well documented, meaning I don't have a census report or birth or death certificate, I could do exactly what you just talked about. It is so important
to document everything. Guess. Or just to double check, even if there are many times that I see names and I'm thinking, and in the same area, but I'm like, you have to do your work.
Right.
You have to do the work. Another is not documenting or citing your sources or your work. So, there are many times that I found something and I'm like, oh, this is really good, and I put it away. Or, I make notes, and then it's like, okay, wait a minute, where did I get this from?
Okay.
What's the area? There's a school in Ohio, there's an organization rather, and it was a school, and this was years ago. And one of my family members actually moved from South Carolina to this location, and it was a place to, if you were relocating, if you wanted to learn how to read or, pick up a trade so that, you would be, you could get a job, they would help you, but they also allowed you to live there. And they did everything possible. It wasn't welfare or public housing, but it was just an organization to help people that were relocating to the area.
Wow.
So I wrote down, this person attended, but I didn't have the date. I just didn't have everything that I needed. So I always make sure that if I find something, either I print it out, or if I'm taking notes, I document where did I get this from and put the date on it. That's important.
And can you explain why that's so important? Just tell people
because if you are just putting information together and you don't have dates, you don't have locations, you don't have a narrative, then genealogy just becomes a bunch of names. Stories are so important. Documenting where someone came from is so important, or just to verify.
Right.
With genealogy, one of the things that I find, I meet a lot of people and they just think that, they watch a television show, like Who Do You Think You Are?
Right.
And they just think, oh, wow, they did it in a half hour and it's so easy. And so a lot of people are very impatient. That's the world that we live in anyway, but so many people don't understand family research, ancestry, genealogy. It takes time and it does take work. I belong to one organization. It's called the Sons and Daughters of the U.S. Middle Passage. And one thing they do is if you find an enslaved ancestor, it's an organization you met, Evelyn, Dr. McDowell.
That's
Evelyn.
right.
You can submit your information. So a lot of people want to join the organization. They're like, well, I know a name. No, you have to do the work. And you have to find document your connection to that person. And it's just important for people to understand that it's not, oh, wow, I want to do Ancestry and I'm going to have everything within a week. It doesn't work that way.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the time commitment, because it does take quite a bit of time, especially if your ancestors were enslaved.
Right.
So that it's going to take time anyway, but just add even more time. And I really appreciate you saying that when people look at a show like Finding Your Roots, and they think everything is going to be nicely tied up in 30 minutes, and that just does not happen. Because just like you have been searching for 20 years, my mother started on the journey of research probably before I was even born, or shortly thereafter, and I've since picked it up, and so I see how much time it takes. I see how many times you have to write, the National Archives or anything,
Exactly.
So, I want people, I'm glad you told, I'm glad you're telling the viewers this, because it's good to have, realistic expectations that you won't just go to the archives or just go on to Ancestry.com and everything will be there.
Right. I think it's really good if you have someone, if you know someone who is into genealogy, to be able to help you avoid the pitfalls and guide you. I think it's important. Google is an excellent source for just going online, how to start basic genealogy research, and follow the guidelines. The guidelines are your friend.
Yes.
They are. I think it's also important, if we want to talk about family, to get family members involved. For me, I'm the only person in my family doing research on all of the lines that I'm aware of. Everyone else is like, well, I think I remember this, or I think, but they don't want to do the work. Or if we have family reunions,
right? Yes.
I have the boards, and They look at everything, and I talk to them about it, and they're like, that's so nice. But it's really difficult to get someone to do the work. Right now, my daughter, my youngest daughter, she's 16, and my son, he's 26. They have expressed a little bit of an interest in it, so I'm hopeful and happy
You know,
about
there's
that.
a joke that there's only one genealogist or family historian, like for every line, or for every.
I believe that.
Because I think
that.
I'm the only one. Well, I know I'm the only one who's interested in my family. Like, as you said, they're very happy to learn about the different relatives.
To hear about it, but they don't want to do the work.
No,
Right.
no.
But you know what? I have to tell you, for instance, as my husband started, and I wasn't really interested, and then I became interested in it, and I was just like, wow. And it's amazing that sometimes people think, I think that the reason they may not be interested, they think that it's so hard.
Right.
I don't think that it's hard. I just think that it takes commitment and dedication. And I really believe that that one person in the family, for instance, you're the one in your family, I'm the one in my family. I honestly believe it's a spiritual thing that we're called to do it. I really believe in
Somebody
that.
has to do it. I mean, because for me, I feel like all of the information that was, that my mom found would just nobody's interested, and I think it would just be lost. And anybody who's interested after me, they'd have to start from scratch. So I just sort of feel like I'm the caretaker, until the next person is interested.
For instance, for me, some of the things that I found about my family, that one person, they founded Friendship College in South Carolina. Another person, a father and a son, taught at Shaw University. This gentleman here, he attended Bucknell University in Pennsylvania. He was the first African American to graduate.
Wow.
About 3 years ago, they just had a whole ceremony and a bus dedicated to him, which I have here. And I've said to my family members, I was like, no one ever talked about this. We have folks that were midwives in our family. We had one moonshiner. But to have members of your family
Right.
that were professors, that were midwives, that taught at universities, that were principals, and that has not been passed down, to me, that's kind of sad. And so I always encourage, if I find one person and they are interested, and people say, well, you don't have time to do that, I will help them.
Right.
I will help them. I believe in that. I did have one or two people as I traveled along the way when I was starting out, they were like, okay, no, that's not how you do it. This is how you do it. And I'm thankful for that. Or you need to take all of those papers and enter that information into a program. That's important. And then as I started to do it, I was like, okay, I get it. It's easier that way to retrieve information on your family.
Right.
But census records, wills, going to historical societies, traveling to areas where your family's from, it's so important. And I'm very, very big on, you have to tell your family story. You have to do the research and then start telling their stories. One thing that's starting to happen is, especially with African Americans, people are not doing it, and other people are going along and finding the information and writing books about it,
Right.
or telling the story.
Right.
So my whole thing is, we're the ones that have been called to tell the stories for our families, to preserve that legacy. The other thing is, once you document and you get all this information about your family, either have someone that you've designated to leave it with, or dedicate it to a library, donate it to a library or a local historical society. There are so many untold stories. I can't tell you the number of people that I meet and I talk with them and I'm like, that's a book, or
Right.
let me get you started with your research, so.
And that's so great that you're
Very passionate about it. And especially with young people. If they're
Yes.
interested, I'm there.
You also, I know you've brought a kit. Can you explain what the kit is and
Okay.
how people can get it?
As you know, I'm vice president of the Afro-American Genealogical and Historical Society
Yes.
and the New Jersey chapter.
Yes.
And so we have a little informational kit. One of the things, I love this quote. It says, in all of us, there's a hunger, marrow deep, to know our heritage, to know who we are and where we came from. That's by Alex Haley. Another one that I love, and it's what we just said, I wish I had realized that family history is a perishable commodity. It disappears with time as memories fade and as loved ones pass on. I wish I had known that the most important aspect of family history is preserving a record of the present for the future. And then we just talked
so
about
true.
how we're called to do it. I am bound to them. Though I cannot look into their eyes or hear their voices, I honor their history. I cherish their lives. I will tell their stories. I will remember them. And so the kit basically has do's and don'ts in it. It has online genealogy resources. It has an informational letter from our chapter president, Jean Armstead, and just basic guidelines. One of my favorites is, how do I start my family history? Write down what you know. Talk with your family. Search other sources. preserve and share what you have gathered.
And that sharing part, that becomes somewhat of a debate sometimes, from what I hear, where people are like,
right.
I did all this research, I spent years
Right.
doing it, and then someone wants to come in and swoop and say, hey, they swoop in and say, I'd like it. And then I hear some family historians, there's always a debate like, do I share everything, or what is your feeling?
If you worked really hard for it, I have to tell you, I understand that. I understand it, but at the same time, it makes no sense to gather all of this information and then hoard it, and then make other family members work so hard. There are people that I know that, as you said, your mom started it.
Right.
Okay, but when I started, there was nothing. I started from scratch, and it was just. It was unbelievable to me. And there are different, ethnicities, I should say, if that's okay, that is so important, and it's constantly done. And so that's one of the things that we work on, is just telling people it's so important. Your stories are so important. Where your family came from is important. Documenting and telling their stories, the good, the bad, the sad moments, the proud moments. It's so important.
Yes, it
and
is.
History is important. So with the press kit, if someone wants one, I would gladly, be willing to mail it to them. And it's just basically a starter kit to show them what to do and to avoid pitfalls.
Okay, and how should people contact you if they?
They can contact me at My Ancestors Speak, and that's MYANCESTORS, and then S again, PEAK @gmail.com. My Ancestors Speak @gmail.com, and I'd be more than happy to send them information.
Perfect. Now we have 2 minutes, so I know you have a special. I don't know if we'll be able to get to both of them,
Yes.
but I wanted you to show us.
One that I'm proud of is I had started working on my mom's line. I had done a lot on my dad's line, and I saw that that I had an ancestor that fought in the Civil War, and that blew me away, because I'd never, as far as military, gotten back that far. And then I went to just look up his information, and where he fought is listed. When he died, what they put away, as far as, it says a great coat, a woolen blanket, a pair of pants. It was listed.
Wow.
The battle that he fought in is listed. And so I'm really proud of this. And then he fought on the Union side. Yes, for freedom.
Yes.
Also, real quickly, he was born in Tallahassee, Florida. I never knew I had family members in Tallahassee, Florida. And so I think it's important that once you find information about someone who's fought in a war, Revolutionary War, or a Civil War, to be able to document it and share that history and make poster boards.
Perfect. Thank you so much for
welcome.
sharing all of the information you have
Thank you, Dustin.
for your family, everything. I really appreciate it. Maybe we could have you on again as a follow-up, because
Yes.
I'm sure people will have lots of questions.
I would love that, and I'm willing to help anyone that wants help.
Perfect. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
I'm Dustin Dumas, and this was Dustin's Kaleidoscope, and we will see you next time. Bye.